Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In our gospel, again, we are reminded that God is merciful and compassionate, and that we are to follow his example, and it's more than just mere imitation. The imitation of God is one thing, but we are called to do much more than that, because we're called to be divine. Not just to be merciful, but to become mercy. And if we are to obey the commandments, which over and over again we're told we must do, that is to love the Lord with all of our heart, our soul, our mind, our strength, then there must be in us no mental or physical hindrances to loving our neighbors as ourselves. That means we must change on the deepest levels, and this change can happen even if you believe some of the newest scientific research on the level of our genes. Neuroscience has shown how spiritual practice can literally affect positive change on the levels of the tiniest cells and neurons in our brains. New neural pathways are open through the practices of meditation and prayer that alter the brain in amazing ways. St. Paul states, to think only on beautiful things. Isn't that what modern science has discovered? It is healthy to dwell on good things and extremely unhealthy to dwell on ugly things, because fear produces fear, anger produces anger, prejudice produces more prejudice, violence breeds violence, and war produces more war. Who doesn't even know that, even in the shortest, in theory? And as a person thinks in their heart, so are they. That's written in Deuteronomy. When we feed on negativity and fear, what happens? We become negative and fearful. Our brain gets irritated, and we find ourselves in a fight or flight mode. The problem is that in many of us, the brain is irritated even when there is no threat. Mark Twain once said, "And I am an old man, and I've known many great troubles, but most of them never happened." Fear comes at us most often when there's nothing to fear, and particularly in the future. We fear what may happen or what could happen. We create our own fear. I suspect it may be that we're used to having an irritated brain, that we just keep creating fear to keep it that way. Peace would seem so strange after years of panic, but Jesus Christ came to bring us peace. So how do we calm our brains? One of the most effective ways is the spiritual practice of prayer and meditation. They're always best. And remember, when Jesus speaks about neighbors, his definition is so much more expansive than what we think. Not just family and friends. He means everyone, every person, even our enemies. One of the Desert Fathers said that the only true test of love is whether we love or not love our enemies. Our gospel reading today puts it very plainly. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? In other words, so what? Who cares? Most of us do pretty well with that anyway. But what about those people we don't like? You only love God as much as the person you hate the most. Why? Because that person is Christ. And you heard that from Father Jim last week, and you heard that from Deacon Tom the week before. Every single person is Jesus Christ. Not only might we be entertaining angels, unaware when we greet strangers, we're always entertaining Christ, and to be aware of that is to be enlightened. That is exactly why here at St. Thomas, everyone is welcome. Everyone is embraced. There is no litmus test, and there's no entrance exams. Put it this way. With all the commandments rolled into one, or maybe two, about loving God and one another, then the whole of the spiritual life boils down to learning to love well. The 13th century Persian poet Rumi said something interesting, and he wrote, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built up against it." Why do we not seek for love? Because love is who we truly are. Listen to these words. To say that I am made in the image of God is to say that love is the reason for my existence, for God is love. Love is my true identity, and God is my true identity. Selflessness is my true self. Love is my true character. Love is my name. Instead of seeking for love, we simply need to recognize our true identity and set it free from all of the hindrances to expressing love that we have allowed to grow in us. Tear down all the walls that we have erected that keep us from doing anything but loving everyone, all the time, no matter what the circumstance, no matter what they are, no matter what they've done. Those walls are in our brains. We cannot tear down physical walls until we tear down mental walls. And if spirituality is anything, it's about deconstructing our mental fortresses. For Christians, there is no justification for hatred in any form whatsoever, nor can there ever be. God help us. I want to share with you one of the most intense spiritual encounters I had in my life. A few years ago, I spent Easter in the Ukraine, and it was Holy Saturday, and I cried for 4 hours because I spent this Holy Saturday with a young priest in the prison there, visiting the people that were locked up. And in my time at that prison, I saw over and over again that the simplest expression of compassion brings the greatest possible results. And that young priest told me, we are here to teach, to convert, to argue, and not to argue, and not to convince. He also shared that our only job is to love. And when we do that, our heart changes. Both our heart and the people that are with us. But love your enemies and do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great. And you will be sons of the Most High, for he is the kind to be ungrateful and unselfish. Be merciful even as your Father is merciful. You know, a presbyter once wrote, our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they're worthy. That's not our business. And in fact, it's nobody's business. But what we are asked to do is love. And this love itself will render both ourselves and our neighbors worthy. Be merciful even as your Father is merciful, Jesus says, and your reward will be great. And then it is mercy that you will receive. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Slava Jesus Christus.
Amen.